Kirk Barton, former Buckeye, All-American right here, joining us. So, Kirk, let's start with where do you think we stand right now with having a Big Ten season, not having a Big Ten season, and a vote coming up maybe soon?
I think that we're going to start on October 17th. That'll give us a chance to resume some normalcy, and we'll still have a shot at the college football playoff. I think that that's the way everything's trending. I think that the biggest thing is the egos of the presidents and some of the leadership officials that are trying to, do a 180 from their initial position of not playing because they didn't think it was safe, where we have the NBA, the NHL,
Right.
the NFL, high school football in certain states, including Ohio, all proceeding. I think that they realized that they made a pretty grave error.
What do you think has changed since that day in October 11th or August 11th when they said postpone it till the spring?
Well, I mean, the one big thing is the Abbott test came out, which is, it's very cheap. Donald Trump came out and said he'd even subsidize it even further. So it's like $5 a test. So,
right.
And you get results in 15 minutes, which is huge. Obviously, I think that, a lot of these kids aren't as susceptible as people thought. It's not as dangerous as people thought. And, I think that certain conferences that kind of stuck to their guns, like the SEC and ACC and Big 12, they're reaping the rewards of, hey, we're playing, you keep your fan base happy, your donor base happy, and all that, drives your fundraising, which is your money.
Sure.
So, that's something that Ohio State's and the Big Ten schools are dealing with right now. It's like, hey, all these other schools are playing. Why can't we? I mean, schools that are in our state are playing, like the Cincinnati Bearcats. They're still practicing and playing. So it's been truly, truly bizarre.
You have two NFL teams, too, obviously playing this weekend on Thursday between the Browns and Bengals. I know, obviously, Ohio State, Iowa, Nebraska, those are the schools that said yes on the first vote. Who do you think would still be a holdout, though? Who do you think, what schools, what chancellors, presidents would say, no, I still don't want to do it?
Well, I mean, Rutgers obviously isn't going to change regardless of any circumstance. They just want to hide under their bed for the rest of eternity, I guess. And, I think that the Michigan schools are kind of him and Han. I think Wisconsin's in. I mean, I know Michigan wants to play, but I just don't know if with the governor, and the governor's letting them play some other sports now. So I don't know. It's been interesting. I just, for the life of me, I think Rutgers, Maryland don't want to play. Part of it with Rutgers, I don't know how good they would be. So I think that giving Greg Schiano another year of a honeymoon to get another recruiting class in isn't the worst thing. Because, I mean, the coaches that were the loudest, like Jim Harbaugh and Ryan Day and, James Franklin, they were barking pretty loud they wanted to play. But you didn't hear anything from Greg Schiano. You didn't hear anything from Mel Tucker. You didn't hear anything from – so you can kind of read the tea leaves on who really wanted to play versus who was maybe I can get a free year of salary and I can get another recruiting class in here to upgrade the talent. So it's like you have an extended honeymoon essentially.
So that's the coach's standpoint, but maybe from a player, obviously you were a former player. What do you think this has been like being in this holding pattern of we're practicing, we're training hard, we're wanting a season, hoping for a season, but you just don't know. How do you stay mentally sharp on top of, being physically ready?
I think it's a miserable process for these kids, especially the ones that are seniors and need big years like Thayer Munford, like Jonathan Cooper. If Thayer has a big year, he could, be maybe a second or third round pick. If he doesn't play, he might be a late round pick, or he might have, guys that have medical questions, guys that redshirt like Cooper did last year. The big thing for me personally is my senior year, I came out, I played well, I made first team All-American, I got drafted.
Right.
It changes your life, and a lot of these kids have just been dying to get out there and play somebody to get the taste of that Clemson game out of their mouth. That's something that, it's been hard, for Wyatt and Sean Wade, who declared today. It's they're just tired of being jerked around and they want some certainty in their life. And, it might suck, but it's, it's like putting down a old yeller or something. You got to put a bullet in its head, and then all of a sudden, you can at least have some clarity and make a decision and go start training and know that this is what we're going to do, as opposed to him and Han, and there's no definite timeline. There doesn't seem to be any type of definite timeline right now, which I think there is, but the target keeps moving, so it makes it tough.
Feels like it's been moving for a while now too. Yeah. So you obviously mentioned Sean Wade and Wyatt there, two first-team All-Americans. I mean, no reason not to declare for the NFL, but how do you think that affects the season now? Because now you're losing some of the best players that were part of this team that was going to make this 2020 team so special.
Yeah, I mean, I talked to Wyatt on Saturday, and I put my interview on BuckeyeScoop.com, and he said that he hasn't taken anything, and there's a chance that he could come back if they make a decision soon. So as long as you don't sign with an agent and you don't accept anything from an agent, essentially it's almost like I was in my head joking. I was like, is Wyatt trying to be like a hero and like opt out, and then, oh, we're going to play. Okay, I'm back.
I'm coming back.
Yeah, so then forever on the autograph circuit and every other thing, I'm like, oh yeah, well, thank you so much for coming back, Wyatt. Take our money. It's just
right.
Yeah, I don't know, but like for those guys, like they didn't even have to come back for this year at all. They could have both gone in the first round last year, and it's they decided to come back, and it's just been a miserable experience, which is sad because these guys, they really had a nice setup to win a national championship. Like there isn't a dominant team in college football. Clemson lost a bunch. We've got our quarterback and our linebacker, which always gives me confidence, and it's been a crazy year. It's been tough, and I feel bad for Wyatt and Sean, but at some point, making a decision is better than no decision, and being in limbo is tough. And those guys are both top drawer, 5-star, blue chip recruits that have turned into first round picks. So, they'll be fine. I just, like I said, I worry more for the guys like Thayer and Jonathan Cooper and the guys that need big years to get drafted and to get drafted higher, so they get a little bit more financial security.
You talked about the craziness of this year. Adding to that the Big Ten has not been, let's say, not the best at communicating. Ryan Day obviously expressed his frustration, saying, it's just been unclear and disappointing overall. What do you make of this, and how do you think this affects the conferences, the coaches moving forward?
From the things that I've heard from our sources, Kevin Warren really pulled a move that might seal his fate. In terms of, basically saying, hey, we shouldn't play, it's too dangerous, even though, I don't know what the motivations were behind it. Yes, I'd like to think it was safety, but sometimes, like, when you read the tea leaves and you look at bios and look a little deeper into people, you can kind of see sometimes what's really going on. But I think he changed his tune, this past week where, he was leading the charge to play because the blowback is just unbelievable, and the financial losses are equally unbelievable. So, when you have your highest donors and your biggest donors, requesting refunds and asking for things back, and you get, tickets are getting refunded. I mean, you're losing tens of millions of dollars per university, and you've already had a catastrophe of a year financially anyway. So, I think that, that them switching up, it has some big financial ramifications, but the Big Ten has been pathetic. There's been no transparency, and it's sad. I just, again, I feel for the kids. I feel for our fan base. A lot of people really lean on Ohio State football. I mean, you watch the Bengals and Browns this weekend, and Ohio State's that's the team that everybody hangs their hat on is going to be good. So you take that away, it just kind of takes the air out of the balloon in the entire region. So I really I hope they come to a conclusion fairly quick so that we can get going on October 17th.
How much do you think seeing other teams play this weekend had to do with this being part of it? Because they've obviously gotten pressure from players like Justin Fields and his petition. I mean, they've never listened to players before. They're not going to start now. They're hearing from coaches, but they're also seeing other teams playing football. Do you think it's just a combination of all those things, or do they actually think that health is now back to where they need it to be?
I think it's a combination of things. I don't, the health thing, I don't think it's really changed, but the testing has changed. And they're also saying that people aren't they're not hauling bodies of fans and players out of the stadium after every game. Kids aren't getting COVID and dying and getting myocarditis and all these other, instances of this, because they're all scared of a class action lawsuit, and it's just not happening. Football's a dangerous enough game as it is, so COVID's the last thing you should worry about if you're playing football, because you either worry about a concussion or a knee or an Achilles or whatever. It's my opinion. But I think that, seeing the other teams play is crushing. And personally, I think it's crushing the Big Ten's brand, especially if you're one of these poor assistant coaches that has to go out and recruit. Ohio State will survive just because we're Ohio State and we've got a great pipeline to the NFL, but it's hard to say that the Big Ten's on the same level as the SEC, the ACC, the Big 12 when they're all playing. They're all opening up this past weekend or this weekend, and then we can't get out of our own way. It's hard to say that we're on the same level as, say, the SEC.
Yeah. When you look at the schedules, obviously you've got SEC and Big 12. They're playing at least 10 games, and if you include a conference championship, that's 11. If you look at the ACC, they're playing, they've got 11 games, and if they play a championship, that's 12. How many do you think it's going to take the Big 10 to play for a team like Ohio State to be considered for the college football playoff?
I think 7 or 8.
Okay.
Because you can get a pretty good, because if Ohio State runs the table, they'll be in the playoffs. As long as they start October 17th, they go 7-0, 8-0. Now, the thing is, the margin is tiny. Like, there's no margin for error when you're playing 7 or 8 games. You can't lose one early and then make it up like you've seen in years past. But I think 7 or 8 is plenty, given that they'll play Michigan and, they'll play Penn State, because those are the 2 games that we play every year. I think that'll be enough. But again, it's tough because your margin for error is going to be 0 when you're playing, fewer games and they see you a little bit less. But if we have Justin Fields and, we'll still have a good offensive line, we'll still have great skill. I'm not really worried about anyone in the conference beating us, as long as we don't have one of those Iowa or Purdue type games. Like, I think we'll be in good shape. But I think the guys will be locked in, because an 8-game season it's like a sprint right from the jump. There's no long training camp and then 12 games and a championship and a playoff. Like, 7 or 8 games that's a sprint, an absolute sprint.
I was just going to ask you about that too. Is that enough time to get ready for a season? We're looking at September 14th right now. A month away is only, October 17th. Yeah. Is that enough time to get ready? And I guess the Big Ten thinks so, because the last time they came out with the schedule, it was maybe a month before the season anyway.
Yeah, well, the team's still practicing. They're not in full pads. They're just in like the spider shells, like the pillow pads. And I think that's been plenty. You've seen the NFL, like in 2011, they had a lockout, and they had like a week, and then they came back and played on Thursday Night Football, and the quality of the football was great, So I think that, the guys have their timing down. I think the linemen need to hit a little bit, but after that, it's, as long as you get good productive practices in, you can be easily ready in 2-3 weeks, in my opinion. Like, when you're, an NFL player, like, those guys that are on the street as free agents, and then they get signed up and they got to play on Sunday. So it's not like they say, well, hey, we're going to let you practice for 3 weeks before you throw in the games. Like, no, you just got to stay ready. And that's how these kids are. They're conditioning now, they're practicing, and, you have to stay ready and do everything you can do to be ready to hit the field whenever they allow you.
Let's end this with a hopeful note for Buckeye fans. What can they look forward to if and hopefully when there is a season?
I think that, depending on how quick this happens, I think that there's a shot that Wyatt could come back. Okay. And I would guess that there'd be a shot that Shaun Wade might come back. Because the thing is, if they actually do this, 7 or 8 games, it almost would line up exactly like if they're, if they started, the regular season on time, so they have a chance for the playoffs. The big thing is that'll determine, especially Wyatt and Shaun, is, can we play for the national championship? Because that's the difference. Is like, they don't want another Big Ten ring. They got plenty of those. Yeah. But if it says, okay, we're going to start October 17th, 7-game season, went out, win the Big Ten, you're in the playoff. You get to play Clemson. You get to play your nemesis. That is what will draw those guys back in. Assuming Shaun hasn't signed. I know Wyatt hasn't, so the door is open, but it has to happen quick. He's not going to sit around for another 3 weeks and look at the walls waiting for the
They've already done that,
Yep. I just always think about all the restaurant owners, bar owners, like the people that own apparel companies. Like, it's just, I own BuckeyeScoop.com. I own an Ohio State website that literally I opened this year.
Right.
Like, the 1 year that in 130 years that Ohio State hasn't played football is the year I opened my site. So it's been very, you got to have some humor when you're an entrepreneur. I've figured this out.
Well, Kirk, I appreciate your time. If you're a fan, check out BuckeyeScoop.com. A lot of good stuff on there. A lot of interesting details about the Ohio State football team and stuff you're not going to get anywhere else. Appreciate your time, Kirk.
Thank you, my man.